This is the Fertile Mindset podcast, where we explore all the emotional aspects of fertility to support you on your path to parenthood. My name is Sarah Holland. I'm the Fertile Mindset coach and a mother to 2 children after my own fertility challenges. I hope you find all the support and inspiration you need within this podcast to carry you forward on your fertility journey towards your own successful outcome. It's also my wish that through listening to these episodes, you rediscover how to enjoy life now and live it to the full while you wait for your baby. Now, let's begin today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Fertile Mindset podcast. Today, I am really excited to be sharing a conversation with you that I had with the lovely Alice Rose. You may know Alice from Instagram, where she has an account that she started after having IVF herself to support and inspire the fertility community. She's also led some brilliant campaigns to advise and educate others on how they can best support people facing fertility issues. Over time, Alice has developed her support offerings and has also recently qualified as a transformational coach to be able to offer even more support. I was thrilled when Alice agreed to join me on the podcast, and we had a wonderful conversation about the mindset piece and emotional side of the fertility experience. I hope you enjoy listening. Hello, Alice. Welcome to my podcast. It's so lovely to have you here.
Hi, Sarah. Yes, I'm so glad that we've managed this, because we had to cancel last week, didn't we? Because my Wi-Fi was not interested in helping us record.
I know, but we weren't going to let it beat us. You know,
No.
We're here, we made it, which is
Absolutely
amazing. And I've been really hoping for this conversation for a long time, actually, even before I had my podcast, because I've been watching you kind of develop and transform, I would say, on Instagram, and your own story and how you got to be in this place of fertility and mindset support. And yeah, perhaps we could start there really because there may be listeners here who haven't met you yet. So it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit about your story and how you got into this mindset work.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess my fertility story was, I've been sharing it a little bit recently actually, but we got married my husband Simon I've just had my wedding anniversary, so almost exactly 9 years ago, and we started trying to have a baby like quite soon after that, and I went straight to the GP because I'd never had a regular period ever, and I just thought, I don't think that's normal, even though I knew it wasn't normal, but I had no other information really. So I just went to say, I'd like to have a baby now, please. But I don't seem to have periods like other women seem to have periods. And actually she was really good, because she sent me for a scan straight away. And then when I had that scan, they found a fibroid, which is a uterine growth, for anyone who hasn't heard of one, which I hadn't when I was first told that I had one. And this kind of sent me immediately into a bit of a panic, because they said, oh well, of course it can cause problems conceiving. And I was like, what pardon, what do you mean? Not thinking that was going to be the diagnosis. I thought, oh, they'll probably tell me I've got PCOS, which they also said that it looked like I did. So I was kind of quite quickly, well, really, month 1 really, sent straight into investigations. And in a way that was a great thing, because we didn't really waste any time, I suppose, but it did mean that it was quite intense from straight away when we started to think about trying to bring home a baby. So anyway, long story short, what happened in the end was that I did have that fibroid removed. I had an operation. And then after that, I had 6 failed rounds of Clomid, the ovulation drug. Then I had 4 failed rounds of injectable ovulation. So that's the gonadotropins. Can never quite pronounce that. Sometimes I just think of them as dolphins. I don't know why, but it just it's in another podcast recently. I was like, I had the dolphins. But that was essentially, and I don't actually hear many people talking about this, but I mean, that's sort of half of an IVF round really, because you have to do all the injections, it's all the scans, you're in hospital. It's really, I found, just as emotionally, in fact, for me, it was actually more emotionally difficult at that point than it ended up being. All of those failed. And it was during those 10 rounds of treatment that I really went on this sort of transformative journey, I suppose. And I think, before I started to look into mindset work, I was absolutely rock bottom. I think probably around the I don't know, third or fourth, after the operation, after 3 or 4 rounds of failed Clomid, I was sort of trying to manage everything. I'd completely radically changed my lifestyle and diet on the advice of a consultant that I saw to manage the PCOS. So I was doing all of that. I was, throwing myself into it as we all do, and trying to Google and read everything. And I just, I did that thing. I lost myself, completely lost myself. My confidence was just absolutely rock bottom. And I think it's important to also add in that, other parts of my life like had not gone to plan either. I was not doing well in my career. I wasn't doing well in kind of any way, really. And then, of course, going through the fertility stuff just kind of felt like a just blow after blow after blow, and there was never any let up. And anyway, it just felt like that relentless hamster wheel that we know so well. So it got to the point where I just thought, I just cannot carry on like this. This is not sustainable. I cannot do this anymore. So I started to just look into other ways to help myself. And I started to get actually really interested in like, what on earth am I doing there in my head? And it's probably also important to say, I also had some support from a wonderful fertility counsellor. So she was an NHS counsellor, actually. And that was amazing. So I had that. I also was seeing some alternative therapists, and I had wonderful support from them. So I saw an acupuncturist and a reflexologist, who were both, I just felt such a relief when I saw them, because they understood this world, and not that many people in my life did. In fact, nobody did really. And it was before Instagram. It was before communities like this existed. There really wasn't anything around. And I just felt so lonely and isolated. So while I was kind of doing all that sort of stuff, I then also picked up this book that had been on my shelf for probably 2 years. A friend had given it to me, and she said, I think you're going to love this. And I'd gone, oh, thanks, and put it on my shelf and never picked it up. And then it was that thing where I thought, I looked at it one day and I was like, okay, I think maybe now's the time. And it was The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Oh, I keep hearing about this book, and it's not one I've read yet either. It's one of those recommendations one day.
Yeah.
I'd
Exactly.
be interested to hear how that related to fertility journey then.
Oh, well, Sarah, let me tell you, it was absolutely life-changing for me. And it was the catalyst for just everything that changed in my life. And as I said, I was still going through all these rounds, still had no idea how my journey would end, still felt all of those things that we feel in the middle of a fertility journey. But I basically went on this journey, this like quite radical, like inner self exploration thing. And this book is a course. It's a 12-week self-paced course that you do, and it just was the most exciting thing for me, because I'd done quite a lot of reading already. I knew quite a lot about kind of spirituality. I'd read Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. I'd done quite a lot of other reading around things like manifestation and stuff, which I'd kind of thrown myself into, but then I was really losing heart with it all, because I just thought, this isn't working, like it doesn't matter how much I wish for this, it's not magically appearing. So I was like, no, this isn't doing it either. And when I really, really went internal and started looking at my belief systems and like what I thought about myself, and really getting into that things started to shift, really quite radically. And I changed, and I actually felt this kind of new wave of total I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like my confidence started to come back. I started to just do little things which would push me outside of my comfort zone. Things happened in my career which I never would have. This was when I was working. I worked with my dad for a long time in a production company, and I started sort of having quite a lot of success with some ideas that I had, and winning some really good commissions with some of the places that we were, working with the BBC stuff. And then we won an award, and there was just all this kind of stuff. And it all, honestly, it did come from this inner work that I was doing. And the effect that it had on how I felt with fertility was really interesting, because what I found was I switched from kind of really fighting against everything that was happening to me and trying to control the entire NHS and, really kind of raging about what was happening, to this kind of acceptance with the fact that it was going on. And it didn't mean that, of course, I was still a human being. I was still grieving when rounds of treatment didn't work. I was still, really wanted a baby, but I had found this freedom because I wasn't raging against the reality of my day-to-day existence. So
Wow.
it was that which was just completely transformative.
It sounds to me as well, I was really interested going right back to the start of what you said there about how quite quickly you went to seek out support because you knew your cycles had never been regular. And that's something I did as well, actually, but I'd already been in the fertility world. So I kind of had a few clues, but it sounded like you were, the action taker, someone who does get things done. Am I right saying that?
Yeah, total control freak though.
Yeah,
that's what
I was going to say that, you say that.
Absolute complete control freak, which I had never really. I was like, no, I'm totally chill and relaxed. I'm a creative. I actually trained to be an actor, and I was kind of, in that world of like, oh no, I'm a bohemian. I just go, no, that's complete, absolute rubbish. I was a total control freak. And
it's this journey that shows, doesn't it, what we, like you say, what our true beliefs are and the way we're really operating under the surface. And you also said something that really stood out, like, well, I decided I wanted a baby and, I want it right now. And we just presume that will happen. And it makes sense that you kind of threw yourself into it. Like you say, you got the test results and things, which obviously gave you a lot of information. It showed you which direction to go in, and then lots of treatment. And it's not surprising that took over, is it? It's quite hard, isn't it, to go so full on into fertility investigations and results and treatments without it taking over our whole life, isn't it? That's a tricky balance.
Absolutely. It was so, there was no balance for me, Sarah. It was the balance was not a word that kind of came into my psyche at that point. It was absolute, morning till night. I would lie awake at night thinking about it and going so deep into this kind of hypothetical imagined future that I wouldn't sleep, because I'd have these like really detailed daydreams about, oh, well, what if I wake up in the morning and, oh, wait a minute, was that a pregnancy, symptom that I just felt? And, just going so far down this kind of hypothetical future. And then, of course, doing the other way, going, oh my God, like, what if this never happens? And that awful fear and anxiety that would manifest itself and affect me in so many ways the next day, and then affect so many choices I was making. And then it's that kind of desperate control you're trying to get. And then we went through all these cancelled appointments as well. This was long before COVID, of course, but there was something that happened within the fertility clinic that I was referred to in the NHS, where they had one nurse was off long term. So I had about 5 appointments in a row that were cancelled. And that was actually probably one of the most difficult things. It's just all these kind of like gearing up for your appointment for all that time, waiting months, and then a week before, no, sorry, that's not happening. This is your new date. And you just think, what? And I remember saying to a friend of mine, oh my God, my appointment's been cancelled again. I've got to wait another 6 weeks. And I remember her just going, oh, well, it's only 6 weeks. And I was like, no, you don't understand. What if that happens again? And then what if I get to that appointment? And then what if this happens? And what if that happens? And just all I needed really was for someone to go, oh, that must be so hard. Are you okay? And I didn't really have anyone around that was able to hold that space for me, apart from my counsellor and the alternative therapist that I was seeing.
So good that you sort out those people, because you're right, in our immediate circle of friends, family, colleagues, whoever it is that we are confiding in, if they haven't got that experience, like, oh, well, 6 weeks, that'll soon fly by. They don't know how, really, because that's a cycle and a half, isn't it? Or whatever, it's a huge amount of time. And yeah, it's intolerable. So I'm really pleased that you had those people that you could reach out to. And I guess that's what set you on that transformation path. And you said something about beliefs and that you changed completely as a person, which sounds, well, it is huge. It doesn't just sound huge, it is huge. And do you feel like you kind of got to know yourself a lot better then? Like you say, you were operating on one level, you thought of yourself in one way, thought you were quite a chilled, relaxed kind of person. And it wasn't until, but then we're really tested with something that is so important to us, and there can't be anything when you're wanting to be a mother and you're wanting to have a baby. That is the most important thing. It's the purpose. It's what you're living for, it's what you're focusing on. So to have that apparently taken away and not sure if and when that would happen, it takes some digging down, doesn't it, into finding out who we really are, like not just the surface level day-to-day operating. It's like what's really going on underneath.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And it was, but that was what was actually quite magical and beautiful, if I can be a bit whimsical for a moment, about this journey for me, because it was like getting in touch with this long lost person that had been left behind, like through all of the kind of, as I said, I trained as an actor, and actually that experience was, I loved performing and doing all of that from a really young age. It was just what I always just kind of naturally did, and I loved it. And then when I kind of went to drama school and then tried to do it professionally, and then I actually went through a whole other experience, which I won't bore people with, but I ended up having really quite serious like vocal cord issues, and I had surgery on my vocal cords, and I had to be silent for like 3 weeks. I couldn't speak at all afterwards to let it heal, and so there was quite a lot of stuff that had happened before I even got to fertility, which had really quite a big effect on the thoughts about who I was and what I was good at and why, because I grew up thinking, well, I'm going to be a performer. I'm clearly like, that's what I'm destined to be. And that it was so intrinsically linked to my identity, that when that wasn't sort of happening, and then when I wasn't, there wasn't really anything else that seemed to be my defining identity, I was like, well, who the bloody hell am I? Like, what's going on here? So that was what was actually quite amazing about getting to know myself again and reclaiming, that long lost part of me, which was actually, turns out it was always there. It never went away. It's just that it got buried under these layers of kind of rejection or failure or, other stuff that had come along and knocked me back so much.
Yeah, and led you to that amazing book, which, you've convinced me now. I'm getting my copy of it, definitely.
Enjoy. You're welcome.
And then, taking you on that journey of looking at your beliefs and looking at how you were operating and what kind of support you needed. You said something just then about being kind of kind and gentle to yourself, and I think that is so important, because I think a lot of us through this journey, we just kind of seem to be beating ourselves with a stick, with lots of blame, like, why is this happening? What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong this month that it hasn't worked? It's just a constant battle like that, isn't it? So if we can turn that around to more compassion and kindness to ourselves, that's huge in itself, isn't it? Just as a gift to ourselves, let alone what it does for the next steps of our fertility journey. So I know that's what you're very passionate about as well, isn't it? That self-compassion.
Yeah, because I think I learned a really big lesson is that, self-compassion isn't soft or a sort of lazy way to be. It's actually such a powerful and strong choice when you're self-compassionate towards yourself, because it is actually such an empowering and conscious decision when you actually get really clear about what's going on in your mind, isn't it? When you notice those thoughts and when you go, right, is that actually a helpful thought for me right now? Or can I be more self-compassionate? And if I'm more self-compassionate, what effect is that going to then have on my next thought? And then when I have my next thought, how's that going to affect how I feel? And when I feel like that, how am I then going to behave? So it's understanding, like, actually being self-compassionate has this massively powerful shift for taking much stronger steps. And I guess it's that flip of just going, it's not about going, oh, it's fine, just stay in bed and watch Netflix all day and eat chocolate, although by all means do that if that's what you need one day. But it's actually understanding that it's being in flow and intuitive and going, well, what do I need today? How can I be more self-compassionate towards myself? I mean, I literally do it all the time, every single day. Like, even with, the work that I'm doing at the moment, I think, oh God, I really should have set that up more. Or I should have had more emails ready to go, or for people that have signed up to the thing I'm doing at the moment. And then I'm just like, hang on a minute, how's that helpful? How is that helpful, having that thought about what I'm doing right now? It's much more helpful to go, well, you're doing your best, actually, Al. Like, you're really doing your best, given all the other things that are going on in your life, or your other commitments, everything that's going on. So give yourself a break and do your best. And it's just such a relief, isn't it, when you come into that mindset?
Definitely. And you're right. Compassion and being kind to ourselves isn't a superficial, soft thing to do. It's really empowering, isn't it? It really connects us to feeling so much stronger and more resilient, and just keeping that momentum going as well, which I think a lot of people are very aware of, aren't they, when they're trying for a baby, is that they don't want to feel like they're standing still or going backwards. They want to keep moving forward. And I know people will say, you know, I just feel like I need a break. I need to take a break from all of this. I need a few months off. But at the same time, their fertility doctors talking to them about age and egg reserve and so on. So they don't really want to take a few months off, you know, so it's trying to find that point, isn't it, where there's something, what is that superpower that's going to, you know, give you the strength moving forward. And I think, you know, describing about self-compassion there is key, really. How can we start to practice that then? You know, how, if we're not used to doing that, if we go into default, you know, negative and blaming ourselves, how can we start? I mean, you gave a lovely example there with your business, and I guess it's in everything that we do. It doesn't just have to be the fertility, does it? It can be everyday stuff.
Totally. And I actually think that's a really important point you've made, is that the thing is that fertility isn't just about your fertility. It's about your whole life. It's about your whole person. It's a holistic journey that you go on. So understanding that it's not separate to anything else that you're really going through is actually part of it. And I think I'm really interested. I'm so interested in self-compassion. I want to go and do like a whole other course on it, because I think what I'm really learning is that some people are I guess it's more difficult for some people to be self-compassionate towards themselves because we all come with different stories, with different past trauma, which might not even be fertility related, or we might come with other baggage which is going on in our lives, which is also individual. So I think, though, that it does come down to, first of all, getting really good at understanding how to be conscious and mindful of our thoughts, doesn't it? And once we're able to start practicing that distance and that separation, then we're able to start gaining some perspective. And once we get a little bit of perspective, just a tiny bit of distance, and it sounds like it's going to be really hard work, and it's actually not, you know. Like, I think little steps every single day, even if you sit down for just a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes on a fairly consistent basis, where you go, this is my time to check in with myself, what is coming up for me today, the more that we get used to kind of becoming conscious and aware of what's happening in our minds, then the easier it begins to be to choose more self-compassionate thoughts, because we all go to that negative way of thinking, don't we? And I prefer the word compassionate to positive, because I think the word positive just has so many difficult little connotations, which I find that cause even more problems sometimes. I mean, so it's absolute, you know, positive, being positive, great, but also that it can be complicated. So when we just lean into more gentle and empowering and self-compassionate ideas and thoughts, that in turn ends up just being naturally, effortlessly positive without us sort of forcing anything on the top, you know?
I love that. Yes. And that's something I often talk about, actually, your natural sense of positivity, or your natural motivation and just tuning into what you really need and what feels right for you, because there are so many decisions to make, aren't there, along this journey? You talked about, you know, going from one treatment to another, and I know that it had various steps for you, didn't it, before you had your lovely babies. So
yes.
we need to be really kind of clear of mind to make those decisions in a compassionate way as well, you know, and not just force ourselves through things that feel uncomfortable. I mean, I can't count now the number of women that have come to me after their first IVF cycle that they wish that they'd taken it slower, or they'd understood the process a little bit more, they'd prepared themselves in mind and body a bit more, but it just felt like they had to keep going, you know, and that was that kind of force of motivation and pushing forward. Whereas if it was all just bathed in self-compassion and asking, what do I need here, what am I prepared for, is there anything else I need before I go into this, you know, huge treatment, it can really change everything, can't it? And I know we also think similarly about what it can change, and we both maybe get people coming to us saying, look, if I do this mindset work with you, will it help me get pregnant? What are your success rates? Do you help people improve their chances of getting pregnant? And I'd love to know how you respond to that, Alice.
Well, it's funny because do you know what? I actually don't get very many people talking to me about that, but I think that's because I'm like super clear. I literally kind of plaster it everywhere. I'm like, this is not what I do. It's not why I'm here. If that's what you're looking for, then, you know, it's not what you're going to find in this space, because I think that it's so important to look at what mindset work actually is about. And I think that to be really clear about that from the outset is actually a useful place to start with anyone that you know that might come into your space, or that you might be supporting and working with, is to kind of just be really open and clear about the kind of aim of that work to begin with, and the aim is to give them back some power in their life and some joy and some spark. And that sounds almost a bit abstract, and so if you're dialing down a bit more, it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's so that you can make really good informed decisions. It's so that you can decide what you want to do about friends and family. It's so that you can be confident about staying true to yourself if you can't be a baby shower, or if it's about announcements. It's giving you back the autonomy to live a life that is absolutely yours, fully and wholly, without feeling any guilt or shame or blame or anything at all. And once that's in place, once you begin to start understanding that that's possible for you, even despite all of the things that you're going through, that's when little light bulb moments start to happen, I find, Sarah, and I'm sure you do too, is that it sort of starts this kind of ripple effect, and it's absolutely magical to witness, because you start to see people go, oh, so I don't actually have to do that, or I can actually do this. And this is exactly what happened to me. It's like suddenly the world opens up a bit more, and it's about so much more than that sort of immediacy of what we're going through, but which is not to undermine how massively important it is and how traumatic it can be. So it's this balance, isn't it, between holding that space for the trauma and the grief that people are going through, and at the same time gently exploring what it means to look at what our thoughts and minds are doing, which might be compounding that experience instead of helping us through it.
Yeah, and when we feel held in that way, like from ourselves, we feel held and accepted, and just having a more, you could say enjoyable experience, but also just a comfortable experience, on this journey, then I do think in many ways that does, you could say, improve chances of success, whatever that may look like, because we never know how someone will finally have their children, what route they'll go down. But if you feel held and supported and strong and resilient, and I can do this, I can keep going, and I can keep my heart open, my eyes open, and look at different options, then I feel that's the way, potentially, that you could say mindset work, then supports actually getting to a successful endpoint, rather than feeling like I just can't take any more of this. And
it's also about redefining what that successful endpoint is, isn't it? Because to me, a successful endpoint is feeling full, whole, happy with whatever is going on in your life, and it's understanding that. I've spoken to quite a lot of people now in the childless community for my podcast, because I'm really interested to speak to those who actually have come to the end of their fertility experience, but that have found a different kind of perspective on life. And I actually think it's so important to have those conversations, because part of what's so difficult about going through fertility is this kind of massively overwhelming fear, isn't it, of, but what if this never works for me? And if you don't even have conversations with people about that, then it can just become even more of this kind of, it's a bit like Voldemort. You know how you don't say the word Voldemort in Harry Potter? You just don't even say it because it's so, it's so awful. But actually, if you just say it and just bring it into the conversation, it does take away a little bit of the fear and anxiety, because it doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. It might do, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just, all it is just keeping those conversations and thoughts really open about what does it actually mean to have a successful outcome.
Yeah, I agree. And for the number of women and couples that are out there, there are different successful outcomes for all of them. It's so unique. And I think going right back to what you were saying, about what we learn about ourselves, and I've had just a couple of people recently actually that have said these very words to me, have said, I'm kind of, in a way, they're kind of questioning it while they're saying it, but in a way, I'm thankful that this has happened, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't be in the place I am now, and I'd still be, for example, in a job working all hours and burning myself out, or I'd still feel disconnected from what my true purpose is in my life. I'd just be on autopilot, whereas this has actually made me pause and learn something about myself. So, and that is a success along the way, you could say, couldn't you? It's something that's given to you, a gift that's given that you wouldn't perhaps have had the opportunity to connect with. So and I know that, you support people in many different ways, Alice, and I watched your kind of blossoming on social media. I think Instagram is the best place to connect with you, isn't it? Is it?
It is, yeah. Yes. I kind of live on there a little bit, but my Less so than I was doing right at the start when I first discovered the community, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, and I was so excited.
Yeah.
And I really was on there, like, a lot. But I am on there a lot still. So yeah, it's at This Is Alice Rose. It's my Instagram handle, and then my website is the same, thisisalicerose.com.
Wonderful. And what have you developed on there then? Because it did start as a kind of mentor, I'm here, I've been through it with you and I understand, and you've developed it onto different support and now more recently transformational coaching as well, haven't you?
I have, yes. So I qualified this year as a transformational coach, which was really exciting for me, because I just thought, well, that's not something I saw coming. I didn't see myself as doing this as a business, as a career, but here we are. But yeah, exactly. So I do offer, I've got my membership, my Life Raft membership, which is open 3 or 4 times a year. It's currently closed, but it will be open again. And I have my course, my 6-week total mindset transformation course, which is Reclaim. And that is almost, well, I don't know where we are, but yes, it's going to be open now, I believe, when this podcast goes out.
Yes, we're talking in the future a little bit here, but yeah, it'll be the 14th of October that we'll be speaking live on this podcast on Thursday, and at that point Reclaim is open for people to join. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that and how they can find out about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that is it's an online course which we do together as a group. So there's a live group from all over the world, and it's pretty amazing. And there's 6 modules. It's all pre-recorded videos, and it kind of takes you through essentially like looking at the process that I've found myself going through personally, but then also with all the now the years of experience I've had as a mentor, and also now my training, I've kind of molded it now so that it's a bit more it's just developed a little bit more. And then they get the online non-Facebook group as well. So there's the app where they can connect with other people, and yeah, it's a really special experience. I love running it, and I link it up with the moon cycles. So we begin we have a full moon opening ceremony, and then we close again 6 weeks later on a full moon as well. So it's got just a little nod towards that side of things, which is definitely a part of the things that I love to explore as well, that kind of spiritual aspect. But it's very focused on mindset work and all the stuff that we've spoken about. But yeah,
beautiful. And I just feel like this is the way ahead now, that we need this kind of support when we're looking at fertility. It isn't just about the physical body and nutrition and all of that kind of thing. We really need to emphasize how important it is for the people that are going through this, not the ones that we're looking to bring in, but the ones that are actually here right now in this present moment, who are dealing with all the struggles that fertility issues bring. And it's so important to have a mindset piece as part of your journey. And isn't it wonderful? I mean, it isn't just COVID, it was pre that as well, but how so much can be provided and connected with online now. It's accessible, and it's wonderful to see all programs like this, like Reclaim and others, cropping up. So thank you for being a part of that bigger picture. I've been in the fertility community since 2004 at a time probably, and yeah, even then there was no Facebook, there was no kind of imagine a world without all that now. But I reconnected with a internet forum, those kind of clunky old-fashioned forums. And at that time, when I was trying for my first baby, I did connect with a small group of people in a fertility section on this bigger kind of parenting site, and that was amazing. And I actually just went out in London with them last week for dinner still. And
wow. How amazing is
their
that?
eldest children are at university now, and mine's just going up to do his GCSEs. So it's those kind of connections are so important, so it's for yourself, it's for learning about yourself and having all these wonderful tools at your fingertips. But then the people that you meet along the way, it's quite magical as well, isn't it? And I'm sure you see that in your communities and programs, that how people connect with each other.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh, that's such a lovely story. I love that you are still in touch with them now. That's amazing.
Well, it's such a unique experience to go through, isn't it? And when people get it and they understand, it's a friend for life, isn't it? You're just getting each other on that level. So thank you for being a massive part of this movement towards more mindset work, more compassion,
Thank you.
and really supported the fertility community. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, and for all your amazing work too. It's just amazing. I love everything you do, and it's just wonderful. So thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And we'll be speaking again soon, because you're going to be coming into my membership group, the Fertile Mindset Sanctuary.
Yes.
So if any members are listening, which I know you often listen to the podcast, I'll be sending emails out shortly with the date and the time that you can have a lovely live chat with Alice, which will be lovely to continue this conversation. What tends to happen, Alice, is they listen to the podcast, then lots of questions kind of pop up in their head.
Lovely, love that.
Then we have a chat. Yeah, so it'll be lovely to see you there inside the sanctuary, and hopefully this won't be the last time that we chat here either.
No, I'm sure it won't be. Oh, amazing. Oh, well, I really look forward to that. So thank you so much. It's a real honor. Really is.
Thank you, Alice. I'll pop the link to Instagram and also your Reclaim course on the notes for the episode as well, so that people can check out and join up and get supported by you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I hope you found my chat with Alice as interesting and as inspiring as I did. The Reclaim course that Alice mentioned is open now for enrolment, and the link for this and other ways to keep in touch with Alice are on the podcast page at fertilemindset.com/episode-044. I look forward to speaking with you again next week. I'm so pleased you're listening to the Fertile Mindset podcast, and now I would love to invite you to join us in the Fertile Mindset Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is my fertility support membership, which is focused on taking care of you and helping you enjoy your life while you wait for your baby. In the Sanctuary, I'll guide you through using an amazing technique called EFT or tapping, and you'll soon be feeling less stressed and more joyful. If you're not already in the Sanctuary, do come and join us today, because the best time to start receiving support on your fertility journey is always right now. Honestly, it makes such a difference to have good quality emotional support and techniques that you can pick up and use yourself whenever you need them. Go to fertilemindset.com/sanctuary to join us today. I look forward to hopefully seeing you there and at the next episode of the Fertile Mindset podcast.